scales.
Not a problem.
Technical.
Not a problem, Ms. Scales. Okay, so call to order the Tuesday, April 21st, 2020 Goodson County Board of Supervisors meeting. At this time, the Board of Supervisors meeting will be held using electronic means in compliance with Goodson County's Continuity of Government Ordinance, Section 1. In light of the potential health risks, the Board of Supervisors meeting room will not be open to the public, but you can access the meeting as follows in the board packet. It's live at http://www.goochland.va.us/926/live stream. You can join us on Zoom, and you can also join the meeting live by dialing 888-788-0099, which is U.S. toll-free number, or an also toll-free number is 877-853-5247 with a meeting ID of 414-088-831. A lot of numbers here, guys. Passwords 363411. By joining the meeting live, you will be provided an opportunity to make comments during the citizen comment period. Dial-in users who wish to speak can raise their hand by pressing *9 on their cell phone. So the meeting's called order. We'll begin with the invocation led by Supervisors Spoonhour and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Supervisor Peterson. If you rise, please.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Goochland. We ask for your wisdom on this board as we discuss the matters in front of us tonight, Lord, and just pray that we lead with our hearts and our minds. God, we also pray for all of the first responders, the essential personnel, the nurses, the doctors that are working during this pandemic, God. We just pray that you put a hedge of protection around them, God. And thank you for the ability to serve. And it's in your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Spoonhour, and thank you, Mr. Peterson. The next item is the chair's comments, and I'd like to talk about the budget process for just a minute. Mr. Badesky, Ms. Horlacker, and all of the county staff worked for over 6 months to put a budget together, and it was great until all of this happened. So in the last couple of weeks, they have gone back through the budget. They've pared down a lot of things. We've made a lot of concessions and a lot of changes to the budget. And we'll have that presented here today. I'd like to thank the staff. I'd like to thank all of our the staff that works in this building, all the people who work for the county, for all the efforts that you've put into this, and for your understanding. Some of these cuts were and decreases of expenses were extremely difficult to make. But we felt like in the best interest of the county, we did what we thought we needed to do. So I thank everyone for being patient with us. We hope we get through this quicker, sooner rather than later, and that we will come back stronger than ever. So thanks to everyone for their understanding, patience, and cooperation in working with us. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Badesky for the county administrator's comments.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a number of things. We continue to be open and serving our residents in response to the pandemic. Just want to let folks know that I am extremely proud, not only the staff for stepping up and our public safety providers for taking care of the emergency needs of our community, but for our community stepping up. There have been a number of individuals contacting us and saying, how can I get engaged and how can I volunteer? And the outpouring of support that we've encouraged people to reach out to the providers that are providing those services. Goochland Cares, our social services agency, the donations that have continued to come in to support our residents and needs. It's just heartwarming to see this community step up and provide that support. And that needs going to continue. And so continue to encourage our residents to support Goochland Cares and our social services departments and others that are providing support to our residents in this time of need. One of the things that we do seriously recognize, and this board took some action as it relates to our residents and businesses at your last meeting, but continue to understand the impact of the small businesses in our community is critical to the long-term survival and health of our business community here in Goochland. We do encourage individuals to patronize these. If you have had the opportunity, you may have seen the Goochland bingo game that's out there. It's basically trying to get some additional support from our residents and those that patronize Goochland businesses to get out and be intentional and show your support and show your love for these businesses in our community. They were vital to our everyday before the pandemic and will be even more so as we come out. And just thank those businesses for hanging in there. They have gotten very creative in how they deliver some of their services, and there's been a lot of our residents impacted through their employment, and so that, we can show them our support by continuing to patronize them the best we possibly can. And one thing that we are proud of, that we have been able to maintain our convenience centers and our parks are open to the public. We continue to try to do so, even though we've had to shut down some of the restrooms and park apparatus. The remainder of the parks have remained open, and our convenience centers, we've been able to maintain capacity and operations for our public at full capacity as of today. And really do want to thank our residents for understanding and working with us in this time. Their patience and efforts have allowed us to keep those amenities open much longer than some of our surrounding jurisdictions have been able to do for their residents. And I really just thank our residents for their efforts, patience, and understanding during this time. So, Madam Chairman, with that, that's all I have today.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Podesky. The next item is citizen comment period. Open the citizen comment period. Ms. Podesky, do we have anyone online at this point?
We have a lot of viewers, but no one has raised their hand to speak.
No one raising their hand at this point? Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, then, that being the case, no other citizens in the room, we will close the citizen comment period. All right, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Mr. Podesky.
Madam Chairman, on your consent agenda, it's for the board's consideration as you are moving forward with your search capacities for the next county administrator, looking to create a fund to cover those expenses. The transfer that you have in the proposed budget is for up to $30,000 from reserve for contingencies for that purpose. That by no means does the board you can enter a contract well below that. It's just a sum of funds to transfer for the board to access for those activities.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Podesky. Any questions from the board on this consent agenda item? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. If there are no further questions, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Next item is new business items. So we begin with the budget items, and that would be Ms. Horlecker, I believe. There we go. Excellent. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I'm here to go through the process of the budget adoption. So just a quick recap of how we got here. It doesn't give all the ups and downs, but we started back in the fall of 2019, meeting with departments, meeting with the revenue committee, establishing board priorities, and then with all our presentations that went through February and March. We had one town hall on March 11th, and then the rest were, remaining town halls were canceled due to the current pandemic. We had April 7th was the public hearing, and that was a little unusual as well because we kept that open through April 13th for any citizen comment. And so here we are at adoption and appropriation of the FY21 budget. So if you recall, there's usually, well, not usually, there's always five different votes that have to happen today. So the very first vote would be on the 2020, calendar year 2020 tax rates. None of these tax rates have changed from previous years. These have all been authorized, advertised per the state code. And you see the list in front of you of the tax rates. And I put the motion on the board, but first, do you have any questions on adopting the tax rates?
Any questions, board? Okay, hearing none, do I have a resolution? Excuse me, a motion?
Madam Chair, I move we adopt a resolution, the tax rates for the calendar year 2020 as indicated in the agenda package and presented today.
Thank you. We have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Okay, without objection, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Just a roll call? Doesn't
Ms.
have to be.
McGee, just to clarify, can they do this by consensus, or does it need to be a roll call?
I would prefer it if they would do a roll call. I don't have something in
Usually
front
when
of
it
me
comes
that
to money
says
or-
consensus
That's
is
fine.
appropriate.
Glad to.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so roll call, Mr. Podesky.
Mr. Lumpkins?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Lashley?
Yes. Okay, all right.
So step number 2 is to adopt the 2020 personal property tax relief rate. And as you know, this is the rate that the citizens, their value is, their tax is reduced by this much in order to compensate for the amount that the state gives us every year, the 2.8 million, that is a constant. So generally, this rate varies, started years ago at 61%. It's gone down over the years because as our values go up, and then the rates have to go down to compensate for that. This is the same rate that we've had for the past 2 years, and given current circumstances, we feel comfortable, and I did have a discussion with Commissioner of Revenue at leaving that rate at 30%, which could mean that there's a slight loss to the county in that the amount from the state would not cover 100% of the tax rate due to us. But we felt comfortable with the 30% rate, so we would be keeping it the same. So citizens would get the same tax relief as they've gotten for the last 2 years. So are there any questions on that?
Okay, board, any questions?
Sure.
Mr. Lumpkin?
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Were you able to, and I know it's all estimates, but were you able to, working with Commissioner of Revenue, put a dollar figure on the potential loss or a very guesstimate range?
So every year, it's kind of a estimate or a,
Sure.
you know, there's unfortunately not a lot of science. We do a lot of calculations to try to figure. And last year, we probably lost about $100,000. And so assuming that the that the value would go up this year, it would probably be at least 100, but less than 200,000.
Thank you. And I know it's all an estimate. I just thought it would be nice to have something said about what we project.
Right.
And when you started to say, and you shifted, you said the state. Is the state, the 2.8 million, is that consistent? Or with
Yes.
with the things that are going on at the state level, is that at risk?
Certainly anything's at risk, but back in the day back when the state was taking back some of their funds, they didn't touch PPTRA. They just touched a lot of the program money, like Office of Children's Services, social services, those kind of things. They took back some of that money, but they kept PPTRA
So
flat. so-
historically, it's been.
Historically,
it's been left intact.
correct.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lumpkins. Any other questions? Ms. Horlock, I do have one. So this would be, well, it's the same, it's the 30%, it's the same as last year, but this is technically effective July 1, is that correct?
They will actually use this in the billing process when they
When they do
bill
the-
for June, for the June
For this year.
payment. So I think if
But
you
it's the
remember when
same,
you
so-
receive your bill, it says the value
Right.
is minus the 30%, and that kind of thing. So it will actually affect the June bills.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate that. If there are no other questions, do we have a motion to adopt property tax relief rate?
Madam Chair, I move to adopt by resolution the percentage of personal property tax relief for qualifying vehicles obtaining status within the county during tax year 2020 at 30%.
Second?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Badesky, a roll call vote?
Mr. Sharp,
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins.
Yes.
Ms. Lashlett.
Yes,
Ms. Lashlett, just one thing, if you don't mind.
absolutely.
Just for those that are viewing at home, we did have some technical issues with the audio as we begun today's meeting. I just think it came back on as we began this item. Just for those that are viewing at home, the first action, the board did affirm the tax rate at the 53 cents. So the first action, they did affirm the tax rate at the current rate. So it's, as we move on, I just wanted to recap that for those who may have missed that
Get
first
that
action.
on the record. Well, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Madam Chair, did I understand that mean maybe people couldn't get in on public comment period? Were we down? I mean, citizen comment period, were we down during that part?
No, we were operating.
Okay,
I had no one raising their hand. It was just on that, we had a technical problem here on the
I got y'all, so maybe. we were the same.
Zoom was working. Those that are live streaming had the issue.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, Ms. Horlacher, number 3.
Okay, step 3, the FY20 budget-related ordinance changes. So these are our fee changes that we propose for the FY21 budget year. We simplified this and cut it down to these 2 things. We are asking you to approve reduce the fee for plat vacation, and that's to be in compliance with the state code. And also, we are asking to increase the utility permit application inspection fee from 3% to 4%. That's as a percentage of their permit, and that is to cover the costs because we have to hire people to go out and do the inspections while they're constructing. So 3% was not covering our costs to pay professionals to go out and do it. 4%, and it's also very much in line with what other localities in our area charge. So are there any questions on the fees?
Any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Horlock, do you know what that average fee is, like how much of an increase that will be dollars-wise?
No, I have
Okay.
no idea. It's the permit is the amount of the base amount, I suppose, is an estimate of the value of the project. So if the value, and the project is usually, they're putting in the lines at say a subdivision, and then they're later gonna turn over those lines to the county. And so, it depends on the size of the project. It could be, I've seen them like, 300,000, 500,000, different, it depends on how big a project they're doing. So it's all based on the size of the project. So
Okay.
that would be the best answer I can give right now.
That's a good question. Yeah. Any others?
Madam Chair, I move
Yes,
that we amend,
One moment, we do need to have a public hearing on this, I believe,
oh, yes.
so if you don't
Ordinance-
mind.
No, thank you, that's ordinance amendment.
I'm sorry, ma'am. No, you don't need a public hearing.
We do not.
We're going to do a roll call vote, though.
apologize. The item says a public hearing. It hasn't been amended from when you held your public hearing, April 21st. It got pulled forward without saying that you were just at the vote on it at this time. This was the subject of public hearing.
Okay,
At
thank
your,
you.
not the 21st, at your April 5th meeting.
Gotcha. Okay, not a problem. Okay, so any other questions, comments? Do we have a motion?
I move that we amend Goochland County Fee Schedule Appendix C in the county code to reduce the fee for plat vacation to $150 and to increase utility permit application inspection fees from 3 to 4% of the construction cost.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. No objection, roll call vote. Mr. Podesky?
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Ms. Lashlet?
Yes. Okay. You're on a roll, Ms. Horlager.
Okay. Well, item 4 will take a little longer.
Yes.
So we're talking about the budget amendments and adoption. And as I pointed out 2 weeks ago, usually this is just tweaking some things here and there, doing a few little adjustments. This turned out to be a much bigger adjustment when we went back and looked at what perhaps the impact of revenues could be as a result of the shutdown associated with the pandemic. So we ended up with about $4.1 million decrease in revenues that we were projecting. And to match that, we had to come up with $4.1 million decrease in general fund expenditures so that we could pass that balanced budget. So this gives you the big picture of the general fund, and it's broken out by major categories or functional groups that we're used to talking about. And I'd like to, and as you see in the middle column, the change is $4.1 million, which I described to you before. I'd like to kind of go down through this list and hit the high points of why you see particular changes, so it can give you a better feel of you looked at that proposed budget for 3 months, and now we're saying, forget that. So starting out with general government, and that's all the departments that pretty much, a lot of them are housed in this building. It's the county administrator's office, IT, finance, those kinds of backroom kind of offices. So you see a $145,000 decrease there. Well, we took away, we said last public hearing, we were going to reduce all operating lines by 5%. So we did that. We also removed a few positions here. We removed we had previously proposed a part-time assistant in the county administrator's office. We had previously proposed a GIS analyst. In addition, some of the conversations and around the public hearing, we also removed the $5,000 dues for VACO. So we moved that from from your board budget. We also removed $7,500 from the registrar's budget for professional services. So once you remove a couple people and you do that 5%, you're left with a $145,000 decrease in the general government functional area. Now, judicial admin, you say, well, then there's only a $5,000 increase. Why is that so different? Well, again, that's just, there were no people, so that was just all the operating lines. And we did not remove the 5% from the sheriff's court-related budget because we considered that part of public safety. And so the only budgets to reduce were the clerk's budget, the county Commonwealth attorney's budget, and some of the small court budgets as well. There's a budget for general district court and for the circuit courts, so that's why that's a smaller amount. Public safety. Okay, so we said we were not going to reduce their operating lines at all, but yet you see a reduction up here from the proposed budget. And the reason that you see that reduction is because although we are including some new employees in the public safety area, we are not including all of them that were in the original. So in the original, there was proposed 4 deputies. And in this scenario, there are 3 deputies. So what you see is reduction is 1 deputy salary plus benefits. You also see the reduction of a dispatcher that was in the original proposed budget. You also see the reduction of 2 firefighter EMS positions. We did, however, were able to include 3 firefighter EMS positions. So we were able to include 3 deputy and 3 firefighter EMS positions. What you don't see also is we were going to add a part-time fire marshal plans reviewer. So that position has been removed also. And you also don't see the addition of 4 sheriff's vehicles. In the past, we've been able to fund, when we've been able to fund a deputy position, we've also been able to fund a vehicle to go with that. In this case, we were not able to fund those vehicles. And we'll talk about vehicles a little more when we get to the CIP, but that's how you come up with that $547,000 decrease in public safety. General services, they look like they have a fairly significant decrease as well. They do have the 5% removed from all their operating lines. They also have some part-time. We were going to increase part-time hours at convenience centers, so those are out now. We were going to add a custodian position, which is out now. We were, in the proposed budget, in the requested budget, there was a groundskeeper. We did not put that into the proposed budget. We did not intend to put that into the proposed budget. It ended up in there anyway. We're removing that. When I say it ended up in there anyway, it was a mistake. It was an oversight. So it ended up in there. We were removing that. And you also have to remember that when you take away 5% of some of their lines, it's a pretty big number. So contracted hauling, if you take away 5%, that's $20,000 right there. You take away the electricity, 5% of electricity, that's another $20,000. Now, you can tell I kind of took a hatchet to these things, not a scalpel. So, I mean, these are all things we're going to have to look at next year, because maybe taking away 20,000 in electrical isn't practical, you know, if we use the same amount of electricity. But again, we'll have the option to add back any of these things in going forward as we see how revenues come in. Health and welfare, Health and welfare has some of the contribution or outside agency budgets in it. And so you see a decrease there because we kept some of them at the 2020 levels. So specifically, we kept the Reynolds contribution at the 2020 level as opposed to the increase they had requested. We also kept the Goochland Cares at the 2020 level as opposed to the increase they had requested. So that you see some decrease there, as well as there's some operating lines in there that that you see the decrease. Parks and Rec and, well, we call it Culture and Leisure, that's 5% from the Parks and Rec's operating lines. The community development, that is 5% from all of their lines, including, not many people know this, but the extension budget is actually within community development. So that is, again, the 5% decrease from all the operating lines. The debt service, we started with a proposed budget of 3.8. Do we have 3.8 debt service in FY21? No, we don't have that much debt service. We actually only have about 1.8. So our intention there was to build up our debt service to about the level of 3.9 so that we could service the anticipated debt for the elementary school. And while we were building up that sort of budget capacity, we were also setting aside any money, extra money that we had. So we were gonna actually put $2 million into a reserve for debt service. And so that got hit hard. So 1.1 million, it still gives us $900,000 excess of what debt service will be paying. But we sort of lost two things there. We lost the amount that we're putting in the reserve, plus we lost our own budget capacity to support that 3.8 million. So that's something we're gonna have to think about as time goes, and how do we build that capacity back up. Non-departmental is just where, first of all the county insurance costs are, things that don't fall under a normal functional area. And it's also where, in the proposed budget, I usually put the amount that I think it'll take to cover the 2%, well, the merit raises and the benchmarking. And then I usually wait to see if the budget is adopted with those things in, and then I spread it out amongst the departments. So because we weren't doing the 2% raise and the any benchmarking, I was just able to use all that money, so that became more of that 4.1 million. We kept insurance costs all the same because we know we can't dictate that we're going to pay 5% less on our insurance bill next year. And unfortunately, insurance costs just keep going up. And then the one plus is the contingency line. We normally keep it around 200,000 for things that come up that are unexpected. This year it's it's doubled, or a little more doubled, to about 400,000. Just anticipating that FY21, we're going to have lots of situations where, like I described to you, the electricity or contract hauling or whatever, where we're going to have to say, we really need some more funds here. We're going to spend more than we anticipated. And then you get to some pretty big ticket items as well. The operating transfer, 950,000. So that reduces the schools back to their FY20 level of local contribution of 23.3. And I do believe the school's plans to come back to us in May or June, I'm not sure which, probably June, when they know more. And they believe they will suffer not only that $950,000 decrease, but also some decrease in state funding, and how they will deal with that. They will come back to you in June to explain all that. The social services transfer, and you'll see on the next, the entire social services went down a little bit. Nothing related at all to the pandemic. This was just Ms. Jefferson and I going back over the social services budget, and her able to adjust some of her things like healthcare costs because they didn't go up like she had originally anticipated. So no impact on services at all. And we eliminated the CIP pay-go transfer because we needed to eliminate some items. And as you'll see in some other budgets, we cut the CIP a lot. So that's part of cutting that CIP, is we didn't make that transfer to. So I've gone through a lot of numbers and lists, and before I go on, I think maybe you all have some questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Horlacher. Any questions from the board at this point? No?
I only have one question.
Okay, Mr. Lumpkins.
Health and welfare. I may end up getting this resolved real fast, but what I assumed was in there was the Health Department, Community Services Board, and Goochland Cares. Are those all in that bucket?
They are. So the overall, it was kind of a mixed bag of how we treated things. So the contribution, what we call contributions, we now call contracted support services. We either kept them flat from their 20 number, or we either kept them flat from the 20, or if they're part of operating budgets, they actually got reduced 5%. So some of the agencies that reside in the operating budgets, like Monacan Soil and Water, they actually lost 5%. The Health Department and the CSB, we actually we actually funded their requests, because we felt it probably wasn't the year to be dinging places like that.
Well, that answers my question, because I just went back and looked at the budget. I mean, Health Department had 14,000, CSB had 20,000, and Gooch and Cares had 12,000. So I was expecting more of a cut if we were cutting them all back.
Right, so
back
it's
to
12 from the
Basic-
Goochland Cares,
Gooch
and
and
then
Cares.
the little bit from the Reynolds.
So Health Department and CSB are funded at their,
At their
the prior
request.
budget that we saw two months ago.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it.
Question? Any other questions?
Just,
Mr.
Madam Chair, if
Pearson.
I could, just a couple of real quick ones. Thank you for that presentation, Barbara, by the way. You mentioned right up front, general government, that the VACO dues, about 5,000 was taken out of the budget. You didn't mention NACO, but I assume the NACO dues are
I meant
similarly treated.
VACO, did I say NACO?
You said VACO, but
Oh.
has NACO dues been?
Oh, we don't,
Never had that.
those were never included,
That's a separate dues, right?
Yes, it is.
So
but
it's-
we've never paid NACO dues.
So the proposed budget had included VACO, did not include NACO. So when you took VACO out, there's no need to adjust. the
Correct,
NACO. Okay, I
correct.
just want to be clear on that, because they kind of move together in some respects in my mind. The other one is, you mentioned schools, the reduction that we're seeing here really is a reduction in growth and brings them back to FY '20, flat with '20. We're also seeing a reduction in public safety, but there again, I believe that's part of the growth. So public safety, what we're seeing here, the reduction, they're, as I understand, they're not flat year over year from 20 to 21. It's
Correct.
actually still an
Correct, they
increase.
do have a growth, and I believe that was one of the sheets that was in your packet, but they do
Okay.
see some growth.
So
from
even though
FY
we're
20.
looking at a number with brackets around it, there is growth year over year in public safety.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good question. Any other questions? Seeing up, Ms. Horlacker, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I have more presenting, but I just stopped there because I thought that
Right,
was a
on
good
this
place.
portion, and
But
you do
you
the
go ahead
CIP.
if that's what you have a question about.
Right. I just want to make a comment, and if you correct me if I'm wrong. It looks like the total general fund expenditures are down 6.8% from what we originally proposed.
Correct,
And it looks like public safety is down about 4%, and the school division is down 4.1%. Does that sound
correct.
about right?
yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so you want to continue with the, is it the?
Yes, and and then we'll do the vote at the very end.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just went through all this, how we got to, all those decreases in the budget.
Right.
I think I've got all that. I want to be sure we say we are freezing all new positions except the 3 deputy and the 3 firefighter positions. And then the CIP budget. So again, big decrease there, about $3.1 million decrease in the revenues and, expenditures in the CIP. So you see some big changes here, and basically, those were all the things in the FY21 proposed at the 5.8 million. We decided to halt things for the most part that weren't already in progress. And we did leave some items in, however, that we felt were of highest value to the county. And I will go to that next. So what remains in the budget is a project at the Randolph Elementary School to do some upgrades there. The facilities and grounds maintenance, that's their normal recurring site improvement budget. We felt we still could, keep up things that broke and things that need replaced to a certain degree with the 185,000. We did put in 1 vehicle replacement for the county and 1 vehicle replacement for the sheriff. And just because you just never know when you absolutely have to have something. We left the fire rescue ladder truck in, as well as the IT refreshes. Again, if something breaks, and you need a new server or whatever. And of course, we've had all kinds of IT involved with this working from home kind of thing. So these were the items that remained. And again, these are things we can revisit if, hopefully revenues come in. I know that, for instance, with the sheriff vehicle replacement, we were originally planning to replace 8 or 9 vehicles. So this is quite a cut in that replacement cycle. I know there are some fire items that the chief would love to be able to do, but, he also prioritized the ladder truck. Part of the reason we prioritized the ladder truck is because it take 18 months to get a ladder truck. So just to get that going. And I know there's some other school projects the school really would like to have done. And we always fund 1 bus from the CIP. Those items didn't make this first cut. Hopefully they can make a later. We didn't make any changes to the last 24 years of the CIP. And then the only other one is what I discussed earlier with the social services. So that you'll see that the overall change is about a $6.4 or $5 million change, and that's total everything. Where you see no changes, we just either don't have the information yet with the schools, for instance, or with utilities. There was no need, we felt in that case, to decrease their budget. They're going to continue operations as they have been. Tuckahoe Creek, we will continue to have to pay our debt, so all those kinds of things pretty much stayed the same. Question on that?
Okay. All right, board, any questions?
Sure, I'll ask
Sure.
one
Go ahead,
quick
Mr.
one.
Lunkins.
Quick one. On the CIP, and I know you said you left the 24-year, after next year, you left the 24 years alone, but focusing on the next 4, our thing is to always balance that, the 5 years, right? We keep the 5-year CIP balanced.
Correct. We project how we'll pay for the first
So I
5
could
years.
probably figure it out. I'm more of a visual person, so if I had the graphs, it might help me. But the $1.1 million reduction in debt service, that's going to potentially impact the next 4 years. But I think the
Well-
way we do it, it doesn't bring it out of balance.
Correct.
But it may,
Correct.
and I'm kind of making a statement where you can correct me or guide me. I think that 1.1 million reduction, if that ends up being the case as we get into the year, that will have maybe not direct effect of making our 4-year CIP out of balance, but it will make it such that we won't be able to service the debt within our parameters. Is that a statement?
That's correct. So if we stuck to the same schedule, we would be issuing debt in 2 years. And at that point, there are a lot of alternatives. Either hopefully you've gained that capacity back again, you borrow less. There was borrowing in there for more than just the school. There was also borrowing in there for the courthouse as well. So you stagger how you borrow the debt. You borrow it in smaller amounts over a longer period of time, which isn't usually the most efficient way, but there would be all kinds of alternatives to, say, restructure that a bit. So it's not a guarantee that we won't be able to keep up that schedule, but it could affect that schedule.
Thank you, I understand. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Ms. Horlacker, I just have one. I believe I remember this correctly. Under the CIP, the Education Randolph Elementary School upgrades, is that all the parking lot?
Yes.
That's
Well, it's not
primarily
just the parking lot, I don't believe. Do you know, Mr. Badesky? Is it just the parking lot?
Or primarily the
I
parking lot?
know that's a big
I think the
part of it.
largest portion of that investment is that improvement, and some of those revenues are proffer funds, they're not all our cash, they're.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of that is proffer money, yes.
Yes, there's
that
about
needs to be
300,000 of
spent,
proffer money
right?
in there.
Because it's coming up upon its expiration date.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that parking lot does definitely need some work, for sure. Okay, all right, well, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, can we have a motion on the budget and the CIP plan?
Madam Chair, maybe perhaps if I could just make one more comment on the budget. So this
absolutely.
is, I believe, our final say on the budget before we vote here.
Yep.
I just wanted to say thank you to Barbara and John and the whole staff on this again. Just add my admiration for your efforts here. But if we distill this down to its essence, we reduced revenues by about 8%, from 6% growth to 2% cut approximately. 8% reduction in expected revenues. In the face of that, we balanced the budget, and we did so without firing anyone, without furloughing anyone, without cutting anyone's pay. We did so without raiding the rainy day fund. Our unassigned balance is untouched, actually going to increase. We did so without issuing new debt, and we did so without raising taxes. So I think this is a very decisive and fiscally responsible budget in the context of the crisis that we're going through. We also put in place a workshop or a work team to actively manage going forward through the uncertainty. We've got a revenue and expense work team getting together monthly. We've got a finance committee meeting quarterly, going to come back to this board with any potential revisions. So we're going to actively manage and stay engaged throughout the period of uncertainty. But this reflects our best guess as to where things are headed as we sit here today with the information that we have. So thank you again for that. That's all I have, Madam Chair. I'll yield back.
Well, that's pretty good. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I didn't know if we had any other folks on the phone, Dr. Rayleigh or such, that might want to make any comments at this point. No? Okay, I just thought I'd give them an opportunity if they wanted to speak up one last chance before we did this.
Madam Chair, you may want to remind folks how to do that since they might not have heard it in the beginning.
Yes. I have to go back to the,
So I believe it's just on their phones, press *9.
right.
I do have a hand up.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Rayleigh. Just wanted to thank you for your consideration and thank you for making some tough decisions during the challenging time that we're facing. We certainly look forward to brighter times ahead and look forward to working with all of you in the future once we get a better picture of revenues and figure out what's going to happen as we work through this crisis together. But thank you for your consideration and thanks for all your work to support our school division objectives and the issues that we have in front of us. And thankful, like you, that we're able to balance the budget with maintaining the salary and benefits for our valued and dedicated employees. And just again, thank you for your consideration going forward.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rayleigh. You're a valued partner, and we appreciate you working with us through this tough time. So thank you very much. Okay. So, no other comment? Then may I have, if there are no other questions or comments, may I have a motion on the budget and CIP?
Madam Chair, just to be clear, we've got some modifications that were proposed today, so this would be to approve it as presented as opposed to the proposed budget. Is that, Ms. McGee, is that right?
That's correct. What you mean is as presented today.
Okay. All right. Well, based on that, Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and move that we adopt the county administrator's budget as presented today and the 25-year capital improvement plan as presented today, including the proposed amendments.
Second.
Okay, wonderful. So we have a motion and a second. With no further comments, Mr. Podeski would like to do a roll call, please.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Ms. Lachelette?
Yes. Okay, 4 down.
Okay, yes, and this last one is easy. So you've adopted your budget, and but with this next resolution, you actually give us the authority to spend it. So,
Oh, no, wait a minute. No.
is you'll see in your packet, it's all, as we adopt the budget by functional category, and so those were the categories I discussed with you earlier, functional and fund category, and so those are reflected in the numbers in your agenda packet. And do you have any questions on the appropriation process?
Okay, board, any questions? Going 1, 2, no? Okay, it does not seem to be any questions. May I have a motion?
And again, here, just to be clear, this would be as presented in the agenda packet. The agenda packet reflects the amendments that we've,
That you were presented today.
that we just did, okay. All right, Madam Chair, I go ahead, I move that we appropriate by resolution the funds included in the adopted FY 2021 budget that we have adopted today that reflects the amendments to the budget.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. No further questions. Mr. Badesky, roll call, please.
Mr. Lumpkins,
Yes.
Mr. Sharp,
Yes.
Mr. Spoonhour,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Lachelette.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you again, everyone that was involved with this, really appreciate it. I know that this was tough doing. We're not used to going backwards here in Goochland, and we will go forward again. So the last item is a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing recruitment for the position of county administrator, certification. We need to certify the meeting. So would someone, John, would you be willing to read the certification?
At this point, it's
I mean, the
the
motion, right,
to go into closed.
right, exactly.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I move, in accordance with the provisions of Virginia Code Sections 2.23711 and 2.23712, that the Goochland County Board of Supervisors, let me start over, I just had my mic off. I move, in accordance with the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.23711 and 2.23712, that the Goochland County Board of Supervisors convene in closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the recruitment for the position of county administrator.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Mr. Badesky, roll call vote.
Mr. Sharp. Yes. Mr. Spoonhour.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes?
Mr. Lumpkins.
Yes.
Ms. Lachelette.
Yes. Okay, so we will now go into a closed session, and we will let you know when we're back. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Oh, my. You ready? Okay. All right, so we will call the Board of Supervisors meeting back to order and certify the closed session. Mr. Lumpkins, would you like to read that certification?
Pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23712, paragraph D, I move that the members of the Goochland County Board of Supervisors certify that to the best of each of our knowledge, that one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Freedom of Information Act, and two, only such business matters as were identified in the motion where we convened the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board in the closed meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lumpkins. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Mr. Badesky, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Spoonhour.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins.
Yeah, I said
Mr.
certify. Yes.
Mr. Sharp,
Yes.
Ms. Lachelette.
Yes. Okay, before we adjourn, I'd like to make one comment. I believe possibly part of the video might have missed the first board action that we took tonight, so I'd like to go back on record. And what we did was approve a general fund transfer to the Board of Supervisors budget to conduct $30,000, up to $30,000, to conduct an executive search for the county administrator vacancy by utilizing an executive search firm. So we did approve that budget transfer, and we also at the same time moved it to the Board of Supervisors budget, and that was supported by a decrease in revenue for contingencies. So I'd like to just put that back on the record in case anyone missed that. Seeing no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.